You are listening to Sky and Fall 3, Traces of Gods by Jesper Ersgård, narrated by me, John Chancer. For My Mother, Britta Ersgård, 1937 to 2021, who really wanted to know how this story would end. Part 1. Gavrelak. Königsberg, Germany, the 6th of April, 1945. The world was on fire. Fires from 1,000 incendiary bombs lit up the night and revealed ruthless devastation. Yes, they were on the brink of ruin, and Major Felix Bauer knew that the world he had lived his 39 years in no longer existed. The future would bring with it a new world order, and Hitler's millennial empire was now perishing after less than a decade. For months, the bombs had fallen on Königsberg, and the old Prussian city had been destroyed. This was where he had grown up. This was his only home. But all that was left was fire, ruins, and the impending capitulation. Felix Bauer stepped aboard the old steel cargo ship. The captain stood in the wheelhouse. An elderly man with white hair, he greeted Felix with a short, knowing nod. These days, the German army only consisted of either young or old men. All the others were wounded, captured, killed, or simply missing in the chaos of the war. He continued aft to the stern and looked out over his bomb-shattered hometown. It dated back to the 13th century, but the historic city center had been transformed into a pile of rubble. Gone were all the city's churches, including the cathedral where Immanuel Kant was buried, the Gothic palace, where Frederick I of Prussia had been crowned in 1701, had been ablaze for 6 days, and only the thick outer walls remained standing. Also in ruins were Felix's home, the schools he had attended, and the museum he had worked at before the war. The friends he had grown up with were either dead or detained in Russian concentration camps. His parents and sisters had died under the British bombs back in the autumn of 1944. Wiping out an entire city that had taken 700 years to build had been that quick. This morning, the Russian troops had finally launched their attack after little more than a 2-month siege. There were plans for a German counteroffensive, but Felix knew that everything was already lost. His Germany had perished, perhaps for good. The Germans had gone from a master race to being wiped out by the Red Army, and they only had themselves to blame. Standing by the gunwale of the small cargo ship, he watches his hometown burn to the ground, and with it the dreams and hopes he had ever had of a happy life. He looked down at his black SS uniform and hated everything it stood for, but it was too late for change. He had sold his soul to Nazism 7 years ago in the belief that he had no choice, that he could make amends for the atrocities of Nazism later in life. Stupid and naive. Nazism had consumed him as effectively as the Russian bombs now consumed his hometown, and he had lost everything. The poet Hoffman was right. Once you are dancing with the devil, the prettiest capers won't help you. The sound of hard boot heels pounding on the ship's deck interrupted Felix's thoughts, and he turned to the young lieutenant hurrying up to him. "Major Bauer, we are ready to leave, but we have to go tonight. Any moment now, General Lasch will launch a counteroffensive, and that will give us one last chance to get past the Russian destroyers and out into the Baltic Sea." Felix could detect fear and stress in the man's eyes, but also hopeful conviction. He still believes, Felix thought. He still believes that there is a future for the Third Reich. Counteroffensive. And how many German men will we...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?